we are looking at Chapter 49 of the Physiology text, which covers somatic sensations. But that's the polite medical term. What we're really talking about is pain.
The mechanics of hurt.
Exactly. Headaches, burning, that feeling when you stub your toe and the whole world just narrows down to a single point of misery.
It is a heavy topic, and honestly, most people spend their entire lives trying not to think about it.
Right.
We have an entire pharmaceutical industry, billions and billions of dollars dedicated to shutting this system down.
And that's actually where I want to start. The source material poses this kind of philosophical question right at the beginning that just, it stopped me in my tracks. It asks, essentially, if you could wave a magic wand and never feel pain again, would you do it?
It sounds like a trick question, doesn't it?
It does, but my immediate knee-jerk reaction is, yes, absolutely, sign me up.
Of course.
No more backaches, no more dental pain, no more burning my tongue on coffee. It sounds like paradise. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
But then you dig into the clinical data and you realize that paradise is actually a death sentence.
A death sentence? That feels dramatic.
It's not, though. The text makes a really compelling point about this, using something you're doing right this second.
Right.
You're sitting in a chair.
I am.
And you're comfortable.
Reasonably, yeah. The chair's okay.
Well, pay attention to what happens in the next 3 or 4 minutes. You're going to shift. You'll lean a little to the left, or you'll cross your leg, adjust your posture.
Yeah.
You aren't consciously deciding to do that. You won't even notice you're doing it.
No, it's automatic. I'm fidgeting.
You are fidgeting because of pain, or at least the precursor to pain. The text explains that where you are sitting, your body weight is compressing the skin against the chair. The blood vessels are getting squeezed shut.
Okay.
You are essentially causing ischemia, lack of blood flow, to your own skin.
So my butt is suffocating.
Essentially. And tiny sensors are sending a low-level distress signal to your spinal cord saying, hey, we're dying down here, move. If you didn't have that signal, if you had that pain-free life you wish for, you wouldn't move. You would sit perfectly still for hours.
And the result? What would happen?
The tissue would die, the skin would break down. The text uses the term desquamation, which is a fancy, sterile way of saying the skin just peels off and creates an open ulcer.
Oh, wow.
We actually see this in patients with spinal cord injuries who lose sensation. They don't feel the need to shift, and the structural integrity of their body literally falls apart just from sitting still.
That is a wild reframing. So pain isn't just an alarm for fire or sharp object. It's basically the maintenance crew making sure we don't accidentally destroy ourselves just by existing.
Exactly. It is the guardian of the body. A grumpy, loud, unpleasant guardian. But a guardian nonetheless. Without it, you wouldn't last a week.
Okay, so keeping that in mind, that we actually need this stuff, we have a massive roadmap to cover today. This chapter is dense. We're going to break down the biological hardware, the actual sensors.
We'll look at the chemistry, too. It turns out when you get hurt, your body brews a very specific, toxic cocktail of chemicals to make sure you pay attention.
And we're going to talk about the 2 different timelines of pain. This was a huge aha for me. The difference between that fast zap of a burn and the slow, aching misery that comes later.
Oh, yeah?
They are totally different systems.
They run on different wires, go to different parts of the brain, and they serve different purposes. It's the tale of 2 pains, really.
Plus, we'll get into the brain's internal pharmacy, how we make our own morphine. And some mysteries like referred pain. Why does a heart attack hurt your arm?
Right.
And finally, headaches. Why does the head hurt if the brain can't feel pain?
We have a lot of ground to cover.
Let's start with the hardware. When I think of the sensor in the body, I usually picture something complex, like the rods and cones in the eye, or those complex little machines in the ear that detect vibration. But the text describes pain receptors as, well, almost disappointing.
Free nerve endings.
Right. What does that actually look like? What is a free nerve ending?
It's surprisingly rudimentary. Imagine a wire stripped of its insulation, just the bare copper sticking out.
Okay.
That's essentially what a pain receptor is. It's a nerve fiber that just branches out into the tissue with naked tips. There's no fancy capsule, no complex structure, just a raw wire waiting for trouble.
And where are these raw wires located? Are they everywhere?
They're widespread, but not evenly distributed. They're densely packed in the skin, which makes sense. That's your first line of defense.
Sure.
They're also in the perisacium. That's the coating of your bones, which is why breaking a bone is so agonizing. They are in the arterial walls, the joint surfaces, and even inside the skull, in the falx and tentorium. Those are linings inside your head.
But not deep inside the organs.
Not as much. The text mentions that deep tissues are sparsely supplied. You can actually cut through some internal tissues and feel almost nothing.
That seems like a design flaw. If I have internal bleeding or damage, shouldn't I know?
You would think so. But here's the nuance. Even if the sensors are sparse, if there's widespread tissue damage in those deep areas, the summation of those few receptors firing can still cause that deep, aching, chronic pain.
So it's not about the number of sensors, but the total signal.
It's not about density, it's about the total signal, exactly.
Okay, so we have these naked wires sitting in our skin and bones.
Mm-hmm.
What sets them off? The text lists 3 specific triggers: mechanical, thermal, and chemical.
The first 2 are pretty intuitive, right?
Yep.
Mechanical is physical damage, cutting, crushing, stretching. Thermal is extreme heat or extreme cold.
But the third one, chemical. This is where the biology gets messy. The text lists a whole soup of chemicals that appear when we get hurt. It reads like an inventory list for a mad scientist.
It does.
Bradykinin, serotonin, histamine, potassium ions, acids, acetylcholine, proteolytic enzymes.
It really is a soup of destruction. Think of it this way. Deep inside your cells, you have all these components that are supposed to stay inside. Potassium, for example. It belongs inside the cell wall.
It's like the cargo in a ship's hold.
Exactly. But if you smash your thumb with a hammer, you rupture those cells. You break the hull. Suddenly, all that potassium and those enzymes spill out into the fluid around the nerve endings.
And the nerve endings taste it? Is that what happens?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The presence of that inside stuff on the outside tells the nerve ending, hey, there has been a breach, structural failure, and it fires.
There was one chemical in that list that the text seemed to single out as the MVP of pain, bradykinin.
Yeah, bradykinin is the villain of the story. The research suggests it is the main agent responsible for the pain you feel after the tissue damage has occurred. It's the lingering hurt. But there is a distinction here that I love. The text differentiates between chemicals that excite the pain, meaning they pull the trigger, and chemicals that sensitize the pain.
The sensitizers. Specifically prostaglandins and substance P. I've heard of prostaglandins because of Advil, right?
Exactly. This is the mechanism of ibuprofen and aspirin. Prostaglandins don't pull the trigger themselves. Instead, they lower the threshold.
What does that mean, lower the threshold?
Imagine they turn up the volume knob on the amplifier. If prostaglandins are present, a tiny touch that usually wouldn't hurt suddenly feels agonizing.
So the nerve becomes hypersensitive.
Correct. So when you take an aspirin, you aren't numbing the nerve directly. You are inhibiting the production of prostaglandins. You're just turning the volume knob back down to a normal level so that the nerve stops screaming at minor things.
That actually makes so much sense. I always wondered why aspirin didn't make my fingers go numb like Novocaine does.
No, it's not a blob.
It's just resetting the sensitivity.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of sensitivity, this leads to what I think is the most important takeaway of this first section. We are used to our senses adapting.
Right. Sensory adaptation. It's a fundamental part of how we process the world.
If I walk into a bakery, it smells amazing for 30 seconds, and then I don't smell it anymore. If I jump in a cold pool, it's freezing for a minute, and then it feels fine. My brain gets bored of the signal and tunes it out.
It filters it out. Old news. The brain is an efficiency machine. It doesn't want to waste energy processing a signal that isn't changing.
But the text says pain is different. Pain receptors do not adapt.
And thank goodness they don't. Imagine if they did. Imagine you leaned your hand on a hot stove.
Okay.
It hurts for a second, but then, like the smell of the bakery, your brain decides to adapt and stop the signal.
It stopped feeling the burn.
You stop feeling it. You leave your hand there.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes later, you look down and your hand would be a charred crisp. The fact that pain is non-adapting is the only reason we survive. As long as the damage is happening, the alarm keeps ringing.
In fact, the text says it can go the other way. It can get worse over time.
Hyperalgesia. If the pain stimulus continues, the receptors become more excitable. It's the body saying, I have told you 5 times to move your hand. You aren't listening, so now I'm going to scream louder.
It abs you.
It nags you to save you.
Let's talk about that stove example, because the text gives a very specific number regarding heat. I found this fascinating. It says the average person begins to perceive pain when the skin is heated above 45 degrees Celsius.
45 degrees. It's a very precise biological constant. It's not 40, it's not 50, it's 45.
Why? Why 45? Is that just an arbitrary limit?
Not at all. 45 degrees Celsius is the exact temperature where proteins in your tissues begin to break down. That's the damage point.
So the sensor is perfectly calibrated to the moment of destruction.
Perfectly. It's not a warning system that goes off early. It's a damage report. And there's a deeper layer to this. The intensity of the pain correlates with the rate of tissue destruction, not the total damage.
Wait, break that down. Rate versus total.
Okay. Imagine you have a severe burn, the damage is done, the skin is destroyed.
Yeah.
But if you take the heat source away, the acute, sharp pain drops off, even though the total damage is massive.
Okay.
But if you keep the heat source there, and the heat is increasing, destroying more cells per second, the pain skyrockets. It's a speedometer for death. The faster the tissue is dying, the louder the signal.
That is grim, but very effective.
It is, very.
Let's shift gears from heat to another major cause of pain we touched on earlier, ischemia, lack of blood flow.
Yes.
We talked about it with sitting in the chair, but the text goes into this mechanism specifically regarding muscles.
This is crucial for anyone who exercises, or really anyone who has had a heart attack.
How are those two related? A gym workout and a heart attack?
They are both ischemia. When a tissue doesn't get enough oxygen, it switches to anaerobic metabolism.
It runs out of fuel.
It runs out of oxygen, so it starts fermenting, basically. And the byproduct of that is lactic acid.
The burn in the gym, I know that feeling.
That's the burn. The text suggests that this accumulation of lactic acid, combined with those other chemicals we mentioned, like bradykinin, is what stimulates the pain endings. There was a famous experiment mentioned in the chapter about this with a blood pressure cuff.
The tourniquet test. I tried to visualize this while reading.
It's a simple but brutal experiment. They put a blood pressure cuff on a subject's arm and inflated it until the blood flow stopped completely.
And then they just waited.
If the person just sat there doing nothing, it took 3 to 4 minutes for the pain to kick in. The metabolic rate of a resting muscle is low, so the acid builds up slowly.
But if they ask the person to squeeze a rubber ball with that hand,
To exercise the muscle.
the pain hit in 15 to 20 seconds.
Because the exercise burned up the remaining oxygen instantly,
Okay.
and more importantly, it dumped lactic acid into the tissue at a rapid rate.
Okay.
Since the blood flow was cut off, the acid couldn't be washed away.
Hmm.
It just sat there, eating at the nerve endings.
This explains angina, doesn't it? Heart pain.
Perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
The coronary arteries get blocked. The heart muscle is still trying to pump. It's exercising like the hand squeezing the ball, but it has no blood flow.
Right.
So lactic acid builds up instantly, and you feel that crushing chest pain. It's the heart muscle screaming, "I'm suffocating in my own waste products."
And this ties into muscle spasms too. I feel like everyone listening has had a back spasm at some point. You move wrong and suddenly your back locks up.
Spasms are nasty because they create a vicious feedback loop. Think about the mechanics. A muscle contracts violently. A spasm
Okay.
that physically squeezes the blood vessels running through the muscle.
So you get ischemia again.
You get ischemia, which releases pain chemicals. Now, how does a muscle react to pain?
It tightens up to protect itself.
Exactly. It contracts more.
Yeah.
So the spasm causes pain, and the pain causes more spasm.
So it's a spiral.
It's a self-perpetuating cycle. That's why it's so hard to relax a cramp. The physiology is fighting you. That's why muscle relaxants are so important. You have to chemically break the cycle because the body's just stuck in a loop.
Okay, I want to move to the next section because this is where the text starts to differentiate between the types of pain. And I don't just mean hot versus cold, I mean the quality of the sensation. The text draws a hard line between fast pain and slow pain.
The fast sharp and the slow chronic.
And this isn't just semantics, these are biologically distinct.
Completely different systems. Think about the last time you cut yourself. Maybe a paper cut or a knife slip while cooking.
Sure.
What is the very first sensation?
It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
A sharp electric zap. It makes you recoil.
Right. That occurs within 0.1 seconds. That is the fast pain. It's sharp, pricking, electric. It's transmitted by a specific type of nerve called the A delta fiber. These are the Ferraris of the pain world. They are small, but they are myelinated.
Myelinated means insulated, right? Like a thick rubber coating on a wire.
Exactly. That insulation allows the electrical signal to skip and jump down the nerve at high speed. We're talking 6 to 30 meters per second.
Wow.
That signal shoots to your spinal cord and says, damage, move. That's why you pull your hand back before you even consciously realize you've been cut.
But then, a second or two later,
Then the Ferrari parks and the tractor arrives.
the ache.
The ache, the burning, throbbing, nauseating pain. That is the slow pain.
Right.
It starts after a second or more and slowly increases in intensity over minutes. This is carried by type C fibers.
And these are unmyelinated.
No insulation. They're slow, inefficient wires. The signal crawls along at maybe 0.5 to 2 meters per second.
So that's why there's a delay. I've noticed this when I stub my toe. I hit it, and for a split second, I think, oh, I'm fine.
Yes.
And then I think, oh, no, here it comes.
You are literally experiencing the difference in conduction velocity between two nerve types. The A delta arrived, told you impact occurred, then a pause. Then a type C fiber finally drags itself into the spinal cord and delivers the misery.
Why do we need both? Why not just the fast one? The fast one seems useful. Move your hand. What is the point of the slow, throbbing pain that just makes me miserable?
Because they drive different behaviors. The fast pain makes you react reflexively. Get away from the knife, get off the tack. It's about immediate withdrawal.
Okay.
But the slow pain, that throbbing ache, that forces you to rest. It makes you favor the injured limb. It punishes you for trying to use the damaged tissue so that it has time to heal.
So one is avoid damage and the other is promote healing.
Precisely. If you didn't have the slow pain, you'd pull your hand away from the knife, but 5 minutes later, you'd try to use that hand to chop carrots again. The slow pain says, no, do not use this hand for 3 days.
This leads us into the dual pathways. The text gets pretty heavy into the neuroanatomy here, talking about laminin tracts, but I think we can simplify this. We have two highways going up the spinal cord.
Correct. The neospinothalamic tract and the paleospinothalamic tract.
Neo meaning new and paleo meaning old.
Evolutionarily speaking, yes. The new track handles that fast, sharp A delta pain. It's a superhighway. It shoots straight up to the brainstem and the thalamus, and it uses a neurotransmitter called glutamate.
And glutamate is fast.
It acts instantly and disappears instantly. It's a digital signal, on-off. This pathway is incredibly precise. It tells your brain exactly where the pain is. Left index finger, dorsal side, 2 millimeters deep.
But the old tract, the paleospinothalamic,
This is the dirt road. It handles the slow, chronic type C pain. It enters the spinal cord and gets messy. Its synapses in this area called the substantia gelatinosa.
which sounds like a dessert, but I assume isn't.
It's a gelatinous area of the spinal cord dorsal horn. Here, the nerves release glutamate, but also substance P.
There is that substance P again, the sensitizer?
And unlike glutamate, substance P doesn't disappear quickly. It lingers. It builds up. If the pain stimulus keeps coming, the concentration of substance P rises, and the pain signal gets stronger and stronger. It's an analog signal, not digital.
And where does this dirt road go?
This is the fascinating part. It doesn't go straight to the thinking part of the brain. Only about a quarter of these fibers make it to the thalamus. Most of them dump their signal into the brainstem, the reticular formation, the tectal area, the periaqueductal gray,
These are the primitive centers, right? The base of the brain.
the lizard brain. These areas control arousal, alertness, and emotion.
This explains why you can't sleep when you're in pain.
Exactly. The slow pain pathway is hardwired into your wake-up center. It is screaming at your reticular formation to stay alert because something is wrong. You literally cannot sleep because your arousal system is being chemically held open by the pain signal.
It also explains the emotional toll, doesn't it? Chronic pain makes people depressed, anxious, miserable. It's not just ouch, it's a mood alteration.
Because the signal is feeding directly into the emotional and autonomic centers, not just a sensory map. It bypasses the rational brain and hits you right in the feelings.
And the localization is terrible on this pathway.
Terrible. If you have slow, visceral pain, like a stomach ache,
Yeah.
you can't point to the spot. You just rub your whole belly and say, it hurts in here. That's the paleo tract. It knows something is wrong, but it can't tell you exactly where.
So we have these signals screaming up to the brain, the fast, sharp ones and the slow, miserable ones. But the brain isn't just a victim here. It can fight back. This brings us to the analgesia system.
This is the most hopeful part of the chapter. We aren't just passive receivers of pain. We have a built-in volume control knob.
An internal pharmacy.
Literally. The text describes a system where the brain can send signals down the spinal cord to block the pain before it even gets in. It involves the periaqueductal gray and the raphe vagus nucleus.
And the chemicals involved. This is the history of medicine right here.
It is. For centuries, humans knew that the poppy plant morphine, opium, killed pain. But nobody knew why. Why would the human body have a receptor shaped perfectly for a molecule from a flower?
It didn't make sense. Nature doesn't design us to be drug addicts.
No. But the scientists realized the receptor wasn't made for the plant. The receptor was made for us. The brain manufactures its own morphine-like substances.
Endorphins.
Beta-endorphin and kephalins-dynorphin. These are endogenous opioids. Your brain creates them in times of extreme stress or injury.
Okay.
They bind to those receptors in the spinal cord and physically lock the gate. They stop the calcium channels, they prevent the nerve from firing, they silence the signal.
This is the runner's high or the soldier who gets shot but doesn't feel it until the battle is over.
It is total sensory blockade. The brain decides survival is more important than information right now. I don't need to know about the leg wound, I need to run. So it dumps opioids into the system and shuts off the pain.
It effectively creates a pain-free reality for a few minutes.
It does. And speaking of shutting the gate, there is another mechanism the text mentions that is much more common. You do it every day.
What's that?
When you bumped your elbow on a door frame, what is the very first thing you do?
I grab it and I rub it furiously.
Oh.
I don't know. It feels like it helps.
It does help, and there is a physiological reason. It's called lateral inhibition.
How does that work?
You have the pain signal traveling up the spinal cord.
Yeah.
But you also have touch sensors, tactile fibers, in the same area.
Yeah.
When you rub your skin, you are blasting those touch sensors.
I'm flooding the line with touch data.
And in the spinal cord, those touch neurons have side branches that connect to the pain neurons. When the touch neurons fire rapidly, they release an inhibitor that jams the pain signal. It's like radio interference. The touch signal is so loud, it drowns out the pain signal.
So rubbing a bumped knee is actual medical treatment.
It is. And this is likely the basis for things like acupuncture or tendon units, the electrical stimulation. You are stimulating the sensory nerves to inhibit the pain nerves. You're hacking the system.
That is incredible. Okay, I want to move to something that confuses a lot of people. Referred pain.
Yes.
We've all heard that if your left arm hurts, you might be having a heart attack. But why? Why the arm? Why not the foot?
It comes down to a case of mistaken identity in the wiring closet of the spinal cord.
Mistaken identity.
Imagine two telephone lines merging into one operator. The visceral pain fibers from the heart and the skin pain fibers from the arm often synapse on the same second-order neurons in the spinal cord.
So the signal arrives at the spinal cord, merges, and the secondary nerve takes it up to the brain.
Right. But the brain is used to getting signals from the skin. The skin gets hurt all the time. The heart, almost never.
It's the unusual suspect.
So when that second-order neuron fires, the brain interprets it as coming from the usual suspect, the skin. It projects the sensation to the arm, even though the origin is the heart.
That explains the how. But what about the where? Why the arm for the heart?
It's embryology. It takes us back to when you were a fetus. The text explains that referred pain generally localizes to the dermatonal segment from which the visceral organ originated in the embryo.
Okay, so where did the heart start?
The heart originated in the neck and upper thorax. As the fetus developed, the heart moved down into the chest, but it dragged its nerve connections with it. It's still wired to segments C3 to T5.
And those segments also supply the arm.
Exactly. The shoulder, the arm, the side of the neck, that's why the pain is referred there.
Mm-hmm.
The wiring was laid down before the organ moved.
That makes so much sense. Now, staying in the abdomen, the text differentiates between visceral pain and parietal pain. This is crucial for things like appendicitis.
This is a classic diagnostic tool. The viscera themselves, the guts, are weirdly insensitive. You can cut the liver parenchyma and feel nothing.
Really? You could slice the liver and not feel it.
Yes. The organ tissue doesn't have pain fibers for cutting. But the liver capsule, the coating, does. And the organs are very sensitive to other things. Ischemia, chemical damage, spasm, and distension.
Distension meaning overstretching.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you overfill a hollow organ, it hurts. Now let's look at appendicitis. It shows us the difference between true visceral and parietal pain perfectly.
Walk us through the timeline.
In the early stage, the appendix is just inflamed. It's a visceral organ. The pain is transmitted via the autonomic nerve bundles. It's diffuse, aching, and poorly localized.
It's the paleo tract again, the old slow road.
Exactly. And because the appendix originated from segment T10 or T11, the pain is referred to the umbilicus, the belly button. So early appendicitis just feels like a bellyache in the middle of your stomach.
But then it shifts.
As the infection gets worse, the appendix swells up. It gets huge. And it touches the parietal peritoneum, the lining of the abdominal wall.
And that lining is different.
That lining is loaded with spinal nerve endings. It's like the skin. It's very sensitive. This causes parietal pain. It is sharp, it is intense, and crucially, it is localized directly over the irritated spot.
So the pain moves from the belly button to the right lower quadrant.
That shift is the signature of appendicitis. It tells the doctor the inflammation is spread from the organ to the wall.
Moving on to section 7, let's talk about when things go wrong. Clinical abnormalities. We mentioned hyperalgesia earlier, the heightened sensitivity.
Right. Sunburn is the classic example of primary hyperalgesia. The receptors themselves are burned and angry.
But then there's shingles, herpes zoster. I've known people who have had this and they say the pain is excruciating. It's not just a rash.
It is deep, nerve-based pain. Shingles is caused by the same virus as chickenpox.
Wait, I had chickenpox as a kid. Does that mean I have the virus?
Yes. After you recover from chickenpox, the virus doesn't die, it retreats. It goes dormant in the dorsal root ganglion of the spinal cord.
In the nerve root.
It hides in the nerve cell bodies, sleeping. But years later, decades later, due to stress or immune suppression or just aging, it wakes up.
And it travels.
It travels outward from the ganglion, down the neuronal axons, all the way to the skin. It causes a rash that follows the nerve path perfectly.
Wow.
That's why shingles usually appears as a stripe or a band on one side of the body. It's tracing the dermatome of that specific infected nerve root.
It's literally drawing a map of your nervous system on your skin.
It is, and because it's irritating the nerve root itself, the pain is severe.
Another condition mentioned is tic douloureux, the suicide disease they used to call it.
Because the pain is so unbearable, the text calls it lancinating, stabbing, or piercing. It affects the trigeminal nerve, the fifth cranial nerve, or sometimes the glossopharyngeal nerve, the ninth.
So pain in the face.
Sudden electric shock-like pain in the face.
And the trigger can be incredibly minor.
Incredibly minor. Swallowing, washing your face, even a light breeze on the cheek. It's a state of extreme hypersensitivity.
How do you treat something like that?
The text mentions that treatment often involves surgically cutting the peripheral nerve. But think about the cost of that.
Your face goes numb.
Completely anesthetic. You lose all sensation on that side of your face. It's a trade-off. Do you want to feel nothing, or do you want to feel agony?
That is a terrible choice.
It is.
Now, we need to spend a minute on Brown-Séquard syndrome. This sounds like a final exam question for a medical student, but it's a brilliant logic puzzle for understanding how the spinal cord works.
It is the ultimate test of your anatomy knowledge. Brown-Séquard happens when the spinal cord is transected, but only on one side, a hemisection.
Okay, let's visualize this. Let's say I have an injury that cuts the right side of my spinal cord halfway through.
Okay, cut on the right. First, let's look at motor function. The motor signals come down from the brain. They cross over high up in the neck. So by the time they are in the spinal cord, they are on the side they control.
So if I cut the right side of the cord, I block the signals going to the right leg.
Correct. You have ipsilateral same side paralysis. Right side cut, right leg paralyzed.
Okay. Now touch and vibration. The dorsal columns.
The dorsal columns also travel up on the same side they enter. They don't cross until they reach the brainstem. So the TET signal from your right leg enters the right side of the cord and travels up the right side.
And hits the cut.
Hits the cut. So you lose touch and vibration on the right side. Same side.
But the pain fibers.
Here's the twist. Remember we said the pain fibers cross immediately.
Right. They enter and cross to the other side.
So the pain signal from your right leg enters the right side, crosses to the left side, and travels up the healthy left side of the cord.
So I can still feel pain in my paralyzed right leg.
Yes, the signal bypasses the cut on the left lane.
But the pain signals from the left leg.
The pain signals from the left leg enter the left side, cross over to the right side.
Hit the cut.
Exactly. So you lose pain and temperature sensation on the opposite side of the body, the contralateral side.
That is mind-bending. So if I have Brown-Séquard on the right, my right leg is paralyzed and numb to touch, but feels pain. My left leg works perfectly and feels touch, but cannot feel a hot stove.
Precisely. It's a split sensation. And if a doctor sees that pattern, they know exactly where the injury is.
Let's move up to the head. Headaches. I was surprised to read that the brain tissue itself is insensitive to pain.
It is. It's ironic, isn't it? The organ that processes all pain creates none of its own. You can cut or electrically stimulate the sensory areas of the cerebral cortex, and the patient usually feels paresthesia is tingling somewhere in their body, but not pain in the head.
So what hurts when we have a headache?
It's the packaging, the structures around the brain,
Yeah.
the venous sinuses, the tentorium, the dura mater at the base of the skull, and the middle meningeal artery. These are very sensitive.
The text breaks down headaches into intracranial, inside the skull, and extracranial, outside. Let's look at migraines. I suffer from these occasionally. The text mentions a vascular theory.
Right. The theory suggests a two-step process. First, prolonged emotion or tension causes a reflex vasospasm. The blood vessels constrict.
They clamp down.
They clamp down. This causes ischemia in parts of the brain. This lack of blood flow is likely what causes the aura, the visual disturbances or nausea people feel before the pain starts.
And then?
Then the muscles in the vessel walls get exhausted from the clamping, they lose their tone, they give up, and the blood pressure forces them to dilate, to balloon out.
The rebound.
Rebound. And they pulsate intensely with every heartbeat. That massive stretching of the arterial walls is what causes the pounding, throbbing pain.
What about the alcoholic headache, the hangover? Why does a fun night out hurt so much the next day?
A classic. It's a multi-pronged attack. First, alcohol is toxic to tissues.
Okay.
It directly irritates the meninges, the covering of the brain. It's essentially a chemical meningitis.
So my brain is inflamed.
Yes. And secondly, alcohol causes dehydration.
Which shrinks the brain.
It does. And that ties into the low CSF pressure headache mentioned in the text. Your brain floats in cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. It's a buoyancy tank.
Right.
If you are dehydrated or if you have a spinal tap and remove fluid, you lose that flotation.
The brain gets heavy.
It sinks. And when it sinks, it pulls on the meninges at the top and base of the skull. It creates traction. That's why these headaches are terrible when you stand up. Gravity pulls the brain down and get better when you lie down.
So a hangover is chemically irritating the lining while simultaneously stretching it because the brain is sagging.
A perfect storm of misery.
That brings us to extracranial headaches. Muscle spasms again.
Very common. Emotional tension causes muscles in the scalp and neck to spasm. This pulls on the scalp, which is very sensitive, and refers pain to the head. This is the tension headache.
And finally, sinus headaches.
The mucous membranes of the sinuses are sensitive. If you have an infection, the irritation refers pain behind the eyes or to the forehead.
We are in the home stretch here. Section 9, thermal sensations. How do we feel hot and cold?
We have 3 types of receptors: cold receptors, warm receptors, and pain receptors. The text provides a great graph showing how they overlap.
Let's walk through the gradient.
Okay. At very cold temperatures, like 10 degrees Celsius and below, the pain receptors are firing. Freezing pain.
Right.
As it warms up to around 24 degrees, the cold receptors peak. They fade out as you get warmer.
And the warm receptor.
They start picking up around 30 degrees and fade out around 49 degrees.
And above 45 degrees, the pain receptors kick in again, burning pain.
But there is a weird spike in the graph. Paradoxical cold.
Yes. Why does extreme heat sometimes feel cold? I felt that.
The graph shows that cold receptors actually have a tiny peak of activity at very high temperatures, around 45 to 50 degrees. It's a glitch in the system,
Or glitch.
basically. The sensor malfunctions at extreme heat and fires. So if you touch something extremely hot, for a split second, your cold fibers might fire, giving you a flash of cold sensation before the pain takes over.
Adaptation plays a huge role in temperature too, doesn't it? The hot tub effect.
Exactly. Unlike pain, thermal receptors adapt strongly. When you first get in a hot tub, it feels scorching. But within seconds, it feels pleasant. The receptors respond to the change in temperature more than the absolute temperature.
And finally, spatial summation. This explains why I can stick my finger in a bathtub and think it's fine, but then I jump in and it's way too hot.
Yes, a small area of skin, like a finger, has few thermal endings. It needs a large temperature change to send a strong signal.
Okay.
But the whole body has millions of endings. When they all fire at once, the signals summate. You can detect a change as small as 0.01 degrees Celsius if it affects the whole body, where your finger is much less sensitive.
We have covered a massive amount of ground. From the free nerve endings in your skin to the chemical soup of bradykinin, the fast, sharp pain of the A delta fiber versus the slow, aching misery of the C fiber.
We looked at how the brain can block pain with its own endorphins, and how it gets confused with referred pain from the heart or appendix.
And we learned that the brain itself feels nothing, even while it processes the pounding of a migraine.
It is a complex system. But I want to leave you with one final thought about that analgesia system.
Go for it.
We established that the brain can block pain. It has the opioids, it has the pathways. It technically has the power to make us pain-free.
Right. It could turn the switch off.
But most of the time, it chooses not to.
It lets the hurt through.
It prioritizes the information, the warning of damage over your comfort. It proves that biologically, survival matters more than suffering. The system is designed to keep you alive, not necessarily to keep you happy.
That is a sobering thought. We are wired for survival, not for bliss.
Indeed. But understanding that machinery, understanding why it hurts, maybe makes it a little easier to bear.
I think it does. We'll try not to get any brain freezes, which, as we learned, is referred pain from the palate.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the mechanics of hurt. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay safe.